Joining us now, Professor Gilbert Khadiagala, International Relations Expert Prof. Good to have you. Thank you very much for your time. The critique is that the commissioners at the AU are largely elected on personalities rather than ideas to renew Africa's broken multilateralism. What is your assessment of how this particular election has gone?
The election has gone very well because we have a new chair, we have a new deputy chair from Algeria, and we have a new team of what looks like a very enthusiastic group of commissioners from agriculture to technology to peace and security, where the Nigerian remains as the commissioner. So I don't know what it means by ideas, but I think we have a team that is elected through acceptable processes of the African Union.
The question, of course, then, is around issues of, for example, the powers of the Commission's chairperson. How effective are those powers in terms of what needs to be done, at least on the African continent?
The Commission has very limited power because all the obligations, all the powers are with the member states. The Commission is there to implement what member states are coming up with. So we have to be very modest about their roles on everything from financing to conflict resolution to peace building. These are things that member states are obligated, in fact, to put more power into. And then the Commission is literally there to implement the mandates it has been given by the member states. So the meeting in Addis Ababa, I think, was trying to get a new group on board and to see whether it can, in fact, implement some of the outstanding AU decisions from the times that people like Kagame were talking about reforms in 2017. How effective is this group going to be? Yeah. That's the big thing.
So do you think this summit managed to do that, to, I suppose, inject some new impetus in what is called African multilateralism?
It only did to the extent of reaching fairly early consensus on who the leadership of the AU should be. You remember that there were concerns about whether, in fact, that process was going to be postponed or whether they were going to deadlock on the AU chairperson. But they did move very fast, and that consensus to me is more important because it means that down the road, I think they are going to put more energy in some of the programs that they are going to put forward.
Yeah. Prof, do you still believe the AU is the right intergovernmental organization that Africa needs right now and into the future, or there should be more reforms, more than the ones we've seen in 2016, 2017?
The reforms that have occurred so far in terms of making member countries to contribute more to the AU operational budget, these are very important steps. But there are still other problems that are confronting the financing of the institution. That is, we need more money to build the other programs in Africa. We just don't need to fund an AU that is doing nothing. So we haven't done very well there. But also, we still have a lot of problems in Africa that the AU itself cannot actually resolve without working with other institutions such as SADC and such as the East African Community. So the synergies between the AU and regional economic communities is important. I think we are going to see more energy in how these two institutions, or how the AU is going to work with the RECs going forward.
Yeah. Speaking of regional blocs like SADC, there is, of course, the critique that says there is a lack of standardized, for example, responses and accountability for things like coups and other conflicts that are happening within countries in the continent. How can that be resolved?
I think we've pretty much lost the war on unconstitutional change of government. We've seen this happening in Mali, in Niger, in Burkina Faso. Those countries are still suspended from the African Union. And there is really no momentum for them to do what the AU told them to do, which is you need to return back to constitutional rule. So the point I'm making is that we have to be probably more modest about how we look at some of these big principles, like unconstitutional government. We have to revise the standards about which we measure some of our governance frameworks, because they are not actually working. But that is not a debate the AU wants to open up, because it is going to bring more trouble, since we have at least a consensus that military coups should not occur in the African continent. But I'm saying that we don't have the tools to punish the countries that are, in fact, not living to those expectations.
Yeah. Antonio Guterres once again re-emphasizing the call that has been made and continues to be made of silencing the guns. However, we are seeing more difficult and more protracted conflicts happening in the continent, some new ones even beginning to break out. I mean, is the AU peacekeeping ability lacking, having some gaps, compromised, or as you're saying, we're just expecting too much and we should just control our expectations?
The AU peacekeeping mechanisms are the last resort. I think the first level, the first line of responsibility with nation states, because these countries are independent, so they have to put their houses in order. The second level of responsibility is sub-region organizations like SADC, the East African Community. What's happening in the Congo? This is the level at which these countries have to show that they can, in fact, help these countries or the Congo or countries that are in conflict resolve their problems. Finally, then we'll have to go to the AU and ask them to bring peacekeepers if things go really, really wrong. So that is the line of responsibility. Sometimes we expect too much from the AU, and I don't think we should. We should say who is responsible first. Yeah. How can we be more, or how can we own our own problems at our own levels? So before we go to the AU.
Apart from the election, how is the AU doing, particularly on consensus finding among 55 countries that are led, of course, by different head of states and make their own decisions?
It is doing as well as we would expect 55 countries to come together and agree on anything. I think the AU has tried, as I said, from the Kagame reforms up to now, they have made some progress in some areas. They are not doing as well in other areas, but we would expect that it will be difficult to mobilize consensus on everything. Africa is still very much divided about many of these big platforms that we have put across. But I think it is to be expected. This is a very slow process of building confidence in our institution. It's also a very slow process of learning to understand each other. And I think this is the key element of African institution building, that it's a gradual process of learning and sometimes failing. And when we fail, then we go back and we don't repeat those mistakes. So I think the AU is doing well. It should be doing better. But as I said from the beginning, we need to give it more money, more resources to run programs. We should not be relying on donors. We should be owning our own problems and our own institutions by putting the money, our mouth where the money is.
Prof. Gilbert, appreciate your time. Thanks so much for coming on. Prof. Gilbert Khadiagala there, International Relations Expert, reflection on the new leadership of the African Union that's just been appointed at this 38th summit that has just